eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
What is going on, guys? Are we hearing me loud and clear? Because sorry for the delay, by the way. I mean, is it a Polarity stream without a delay? But things were looking a bit glitchy on my end. I don't know how it's receiving on your end. Obviously, we got the Suki cam there, which is a brand new feature of the stream. We got the chat here as well, which are all things that I'm probably going to have to kind of just touch up as we go, just to perfect them and make sure they all look fine. For example, I would like this to be a lot bigger. Maybe that's going to be better over here. This is something I can't edit when I'm not live, by the way. I can't get a preview to come up to work with, so, you know, we're just going to have to deal with that. But how are we all, guys? Thank you all for being here. Please chuck a like on the stream because we're going to be getting straight into this show today. We're going to be looking at the idea, as you can tell from the thumbnail, that aliens are not just here, but they've been here for a long, long time. It's not about, are they real? Yes, they're real. Yes, they're here. And yes, they have been interfering, controlling, even manipulating our society for a long, long time. And I know that sounds absolutely wild and completely tinfoil hat-esque of me to say, but this isn't me saying it, right? This isn't just me getting on here and telling you this stuff. We're going to be looking at lawyers, colonels from the army, ex-government contractors. Okay, these are legitimate people from legitimate places saying all the same stuff, and not even just the same stuff, but like they're all agreeing that these bases are in the same places. So either everyone's going crazy or something wild is going on. Both of those answers are kind of crazy, to be honest. So this is obviously something that Ross Coulthart stated in a way that he knew it, like as fact, that there was a secret base in Arizona where some faction of US military was working alongside a non-human intelligence, and that he saw it himself, a giant orange orb being escorted by a dozen black helicopters. It sounds absolutely wild, but it's not new, right? And that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be combing through the list of people who have kind of been telling us this for a long time now and putting some dots together. Now, I've been saying this myself a lot lately, that, you know, just if you look at the vast amount of evidence and testimony out there, it does seem like something is here and interfering with us. I think that's the key part. I mean, look around at the world. Why can't we stop warring with each other? Like, what is with all the bullshit, the confusion, the chaos? It feels like something weird is going on. Mark Vincent says, Suki was my golden retriever's name. Had to put her to sleep last year at 14 years old. Mark, I'm sorry to hear that, man. I'm sure that would have been very tough. But if it makes you feel any better, we have Suki here. Suki Cam, we can check on her at any time to make sure that she's doing okay. So we have Suki Cam as part of the stream now. She's not the most diligent UFO investigator, but, you know, she serves a purpose. And unfortunately, she's facing the wrong way for the camera right now, but, you know, maybe she'll shift a little bit later. So before we get into the clips today, I just wanted to kind of go through a bit of a setup for the show. So I have sort of given the example that the leaders of the countries in the world are more like regional managers. Okay, like regional managers of a larger franchise, that we as regular people are just kind of employees, and we're just sort of shown like this narrow band of reality that's been carefully crafted to give us the illusion of choice and freedom. But I think, okay, let me just tick this up for a sec. Let me know if that fixes it. Maybe it's the double camera that's giving you guys problems. But I know the other day we were losing hundreds of people off the stream at a time, which is really weird. I don't know why that's happening. Seems like a lot of people are getting booted now, which is unfortunate, but there's nothing I can do about it on my end, guys. So I apologize. Just please keep trying to refresh, and I will just keep the show. I'll keep the show rolling. I tried to look into why this was happening, and I didn't really get any answers, unfortunately. But let's continue on. So I think people are slowly kind of waking up to the idea that we sort of live in this false democracy. Like, I mean, you can only have so many elections, right, that swing like left, and then it goes right, and then it goes left, and then back again, until people start to realize that like it actually doesn't matter. Like, this is just two sides of the same coin. Or maybe like they're both bound by the same set of rules is probably a more accurate representation for what we're talking about today. Because think about it, how can our technology be more advanced than ever, yet we're seemingly never have been more like physically and mentally unhealthy? But technology is like, you know, AI, the stuff that's being developed right now is like, you know, insane. It's like magic. Yet somehow everyone's like got mental health problems and everyone's overweight. It doesn't add up, right? Something is wrong, clearly. So how is the American government unable to account for billions of dollars that just seem to go missing into a black hole every year, and yet it's never been harder for regular people to afford to just live, general living costs, or to buy their own home, right? Those facts alone give you a little feeling that whoever is really pulling the strings behind all of this does not have the human best interest at heart. Just based on those facts, that's how it comes off, right? Which brings us to the idea of disclosure. You would think that given like those grim facts that, you know, how unhealthy we are versus technology versus the cost of living, etc., versus the money that's disappearing, you would think that the government would be doing everything they could to like progress, explore, raise the collective consciousness of society. And at the same time, there are these reports of these mysterious things flying around in our skies, exhibiting a technology that we don't even understand. People have reported encountering beings from these craft, allegedly, that range from human-like to not human at all. People are receiving telepathic messages, being examined. Okay, you're getting all of these crazy stories while society is in a bad place. You would think that given the poor state of the world, you would sort of assume that any leadership model would take these things pretty seriously, right? Either as a road to sort of perhaps revolutionary technology, or like even just a greater understanding of our existence. Like, what are we doing here? How do we get here? Or maybe something that could explain why we're stuck in a constant state of conflict and confusion. So at the very least, you would expect him to follow it up, or at least take it seriously, have some kind of open investigation. But we don't get that. We don't get any of that. For almost 70 years, just the mere mention of UFO or aliens would just have you like ridiculed and laughed out of the room. And ironically, since those reports have started and, you know, these things in our sky, is when our technology has spiked harder in the last 70 years than it ever has in history. Okay, the way we have advanced in the last 70 years is just like, it's an anomaly. Coincidentally, there are anomalies all over the sky that no one's talking about. Maybe they're connected. I don't know. So let's just ask the basic fundamental questions, right? Why would a government seemingly not be interested in a question that could help them understand more about the world, more about us and our purpose, right? And or whatever else that we're evidently sharing this space with. And I've thought about that, right? Get in the chat. Let me know. If you think you have a good answer for that question, please let me know. But I have thought about it, and the only genuine answer that I can think of is that they do know. They do know the answer, but they don't want to tell us, right? They've ruined people's lives, ridiculed patriots who've served their country, deleted their service and academic history of people who have spoken too loudly about what they know, made them out to be a fraud, okay, completely ruined them. And it even seems like they have killed people from their own country, patriots, removed. And when you think about the fact that all of those options to, like, you know, ruin someone's credibility, remove them, ridicule them, ruin their life, all of those options were seen by humans as a better option than actually just telling us the truth about what the hell is actually going on here, right? So it makes me feel like if that's the case, if those are better options or seen as better options, it makes it seem like if we knew what was really going on, it would probably mark the most volatile shift society has ever seen. Because when these issues manage to make their way, like, into Congress, into the White House eventually, somehow, somewhere along the line, they always just fizzle out and disappear. Meaning that somewhere at the top of the society's control structure, there is something that does not want you to know why the world is the way it is and what is going on. And I think that is the terrible truth. If it's a favorable option to ruin people's lives, delete their history, ridicule them, sometimes even remove them, if that is a better option than telling people the truth, whatever the truth is obviously terrible, okay? So we're going to kick off the show today with a video from one of the channel favorites. We love Richard Dolan here. I know you guys do too. I'm a big fan. We're going to be kicking off with a video that he just put out called What If It's All Real? He's basically posing the question and talking about it. Maybe some of you have seen it. Just came out a couple of days ago. We're going to be looking at a few clips from that. He gives an account from a man named Lieutenant Colonel Ernie Kellerstrass, also known as Hawk, who doesn't just suggest all of this as a theory, but he relays it as a known fact. And I'll have the link below after the show so you guys can go and check out the full thing. But we're going to watch clips of it and we're going to kind of stop off along the way and look at some corroborating evidence as well. Okay, we're going to try and connect some dots because as crazy as it sounds, it seems like society is actually being controlled and manipulated by something possibly non-human, and it likely has a grip on the government, the intelligence agencies, and the military as well. Now, just before we get into the clips, well, let's jump over to the reaction screen because we've done a little home improvement over here. As you can see, we've got a few things popping, and like I said, I wish this chat was a little bit bigger, but we'll have to fix that one for the next stream. I always try and improve it a little bit every time. Let me just get to a couple of these super chats quickly, and then we'll get started. So we had a $5 come in from El Significa. Keep up the good work. Your channel is a joy. Thank you. I appreciate the $5. Christina with $2. Keep putting the truth out there, mate. I will. We're not stopping anytime soon. Ryan Believes with 20 euros. Massive super chat. Says, Josh, the reason no one cares about society is because we are heading towards a convergence. AI, world conflicts, mass UAP sightings, misinformation, mass awakenings. I reckon 1 to 2 years until we face a mass extinction event. Very grim from my man Ryan, but I respect it. Thank you for the 20, my bro. And Poland Power coming in with a membership milestone. Sit on it and rotate, baby. We love to hear it. All right, so let's go straight into Richard Dolan. Like I said, this is a new video of his called What If It's All True? And that is kind of the question that we're going to be digging into today. So let me make sure you guys got some sound and let's go.
About some of the more remarkable and frankly unsettling testimonies to come out of the classified world over the years. And here's one that I think that most people still don't know about. It comes from a man named Ernie Kellerstrass, though if you've read Bruce Maccabee's writings, you would know him as Hawk. Bruce Maccabee, who unfortunately is no longer with us, both he and Colonel Kellerstrass are both now gone. But Bruce Maccabee wrote an unpublished, formerly unpublished book called Hawk Tales. It is available. There's a PDF download. I will provide a link for those of you who are interested in reading it. I highly recommend it. But basically, if you read that, you will see that Ernest Kellerstrass was no ordinary guy. He worked in military aerospace. He had deep ties to classified programs, and by all accounts was an insider with legitimate access. When he spoke to Maccabee, this is over more than a decade, phone calls, email, written correspondence, the whole thing. They were in touch for a very long time over this during the 1990s and into the early 2000s. He never publicly laid out these extraordinary claims. This is just something he spoke to quietly to Dr. Maccabee. And to be clear, Bruce took him seriously, very seriously. So according to Hawk, the U.S. government isn't just aware of a non-human presence. It's in contact with it.
There it is.
He told Maccabee flat out, aliens are here. They're operating a base in Nevada, and they're not nice guys. That was his phrase.
There it is.
Nice guys. He wasn't being cute about it. He was
Lieutenant Colonel.
quite serious. This was not a benevolent contact scenario. Kellerstrass clearly believed this presence was being kept secret for a reason and not just to avoid panic. He also claimed that at some point the U.S. entered into an arrangement or some kind of understanding with this alien presence. He didn't give a lot of details, but the implication was clear. There's a deal in place, some kind of agreement that binds or at least limits what our own people can say or do. And he did not stop there. He said that he had personally witnessed a recovered alien craft being studied, something non-human, under close examination by military or intelligence personnel. And he did not elaborate on the technology or the circumstances, but it was enough for Bruce Maccabee to believe this was not secondhand gossip. This was a man recounting something he saw with his own eyes.
So there you go. That's the first part of Richard's clip that we're going to be checking out. Okay, I tried to fix the chat box in the meantime there, but it's it's going to take some work. It's going to take a little bit of work. I don't think that was the right move, unfortunately. But what we're going to be looking at next is another colonel. Okay, a colonel we're probably a lot more familiar with. His name is Colonel Carl Nell. So he is retired U.S. Army, background in intelligence. And I think one thing is that people forget about Carl Nell is that he was also the former director of strategy at Northrop Grumman. Northrop Grumman, which, by the way, is Stephen Greer's uncle's company, if anyone didn't already know that. I think Stephen Greer might have mentioned it in about maybe 300 or 400 podcast appearances that he's done. But just in case anyone didn't know, that is his uncle's company. Okay, just to be clear on that. So let's take a listen to Carl Nell tell us the same thing.
And so what actually is this topic, right? And Ross and Lou also have alluded to this. Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity on this planet. This interaction is ongoing and it's not new. And there is zero doubt. But you already knew that. So how do we go about convincing other people that this is the case? Particularly people that aren't necessarily privy to all the information that some of us may otherwise be. And so there's three principal lines of effort, three principal sources of data. There's essentially the first principles argument, which basically says, counter to common belief, that life is common in the universe. How do we know life should be common in the universe? There's 20 billion sun-like stars in the universe. The sun is a population 1 star. There are planets like this, there's stars like the sun that are 5 billion years older than the sun. That's plenty of time for other civilizations to evolve on these other planets. There's recent scholarship that says that life evolved on Earth in the Hadean era. The Hadean era was before the crust even cooled. There's recent scholarship that says that microbes have been found in terrestrial rock that have dated to 2 billion years ago, essentially in stasis. So life evolved here very quickly. There are many, many planets like the sun, and there are many, many planets that are much older than the sun. People that would argue that life is uncommon have to justify that proposition more than anyone would have to justify the fact that life evolves very quickly.
It's so true.
The second point is faster than light travel. Everybody says faster than light travel is not possible. This is false. Miguel Alcubierre, a postgraduate student at the University of Mexico in 1994, solved Einstein's equations for an effective faster than light mechanism. NASA has investigated this. Everyone accepts his solution is valid. His solution requires negative energy. In 1960, quantum physics demonstrated or predicted the reality of negative energy. In the 90s, the Casimir effect was demonstrated in the laboratory. The Casimir effect demonstrates negative energy. The expansion
I think Ashton Forbes' ears just pricked up somewhere in America. Casimir effect?
of the universe, which is caused by dark energy, is negative energy. So we have a solution to Einstein's equations that allow effective faster than light travel. We've got the existence of negative energy proven. This isn't an engineering solution. This isn't a means where we can go and do this, but theoretically it's possible. And this is not argued by modern scholarship. So from a first principles, life is more than likely common, and we know that Einstein's equations support effective faster than light travel. That's the first principles argument. The second is the testimonial. Perhaps there are people out there that may know more than some of us might know, including people that have been in the intelligence community, such as myself. So we can look at several presidents, Barack Obama, President Trump. They both said UAP are real. We can look at, as was mentioned earlier, Chris Mellon, Dave Grush, Lou Elizondo have said non-human intelligence is real.
Yep.
We can look at Lord of the Fleet, Lord Hill Norton, a chief of the defense staff in the United Kingdom in past years, have said UFOs are real. We can look at the first Earl Mountbatten of Burma in the United Kingdom again, that have said UFOs are real. We can look at the chief of the Canadian Defense Ministry, Paul Hellyer, who have said non-human intelligence is real. We can look at Haim Eshed, who is the Israelis' father of their space program, who has said non-human intelligence is real. All these people and more would be in a position to know.
But for some reason, people are still more interested in their sports teams. I mean, the caliber of the people that he just listed there, Haim Eshed is a massive one. We haven't talked about him on the channel for a while, but we've definitely covered him quite a bit. I mean, his interview is a fascinating case. Paul Hellyer is a massive one too. I don't have any Paul Hellyer clips to look at today. I'm sure we will eventually. But oh my word, that is a large super chat. I will get to that in a moment. Paul Hellyer is fascinating. Ex-Minister of Defense for Canada in the 60s. And in like 2011, he was speaking about there being 4 races here working with us. You know, like he was saying this in 2011. It's absolutely wild. And El Significa, with another super chat, 100 Canadian dollars. That is absolutely insane. Thank you. That's the biggest super chat I've ever had. Thank you, man. He says, convincing people that this is happening is like convincing people in the 16th century that the earth revolves around the sun. Exactly. And I love that you use that example because that's the perfect example, right? That whole idea was heretical. You know, you were to be trialed and strung up for even suggesting such a thing like that back then. The same way people who entertain the ideas of UFOs and aliens are ridiculed and laughed at and have their credibility publicly ruined, right? It's the same thing. Why would we assume that we, as in the people who are alive now, we kind of just assume that we all would just happen to be born at the perfect time where we already know everything about the world around us? Like, that's such an ignorant framework to have, right? To just assume that, oh yeah, I'm here, so I guess we figured it all out, right? I wouldn't be here if we hadn't figured shit out by now, right? I don't have to do anything, do I? We got this all sorted? Sweet. I'm gonna go watch some sport and drink some beers. So that's 2 army colonels that we have heard from already. 2 army colonels telling us that non-human intelligence is real and that it is interacting with our planet. The next person we're going to hear from is a lawyer, public interest lawyer, talking about alien bases off of Baja, California, and also talking about the Sedona secret mountain base that Ross spoke about recently that we covered as well. So check this out. This is Danny Sheehan in 2023, by the way. This is, the whole Sedona secret mountain thing is popping up now because Ross talked about it. But here's Danny Sheehan talking about it in 2023. Check this out. Make sure you got volume.
They deployed an entire carrier group down off...
A carrier group?
Yeah, the Nimitz carrier group. They deployed it down off the Baja to monitor the site down there. There's an underwater base for sure, right off Guadalupe Island, down underneath the sea.
Can we
yeah.
Google Guadalupe Island so we
yeah.
can see that?
Yeah, there's a specific spot.
You said this has to do with the church?
No, what I'm saying is that there are things happening now. There's such rapid developments that are going on now that they now know that there is this location right off Guadalupe Island. But
I'm pretty sure Julian Dory and Ashton Forbes are really good friends. I think they're really close. They hang out and play Magic the Gathering together all the time.
Between there and Baja,
that island right there on the screen.
Which one is Guadalupe?
Unless we just lost the screen.
Is Guadalupe Island? Yeah, down there's Baja. One of those. It's right there. It's which one is Guadalupe?
The little thing right there. Yeah, that thing.
Yeah, that would be it.
Got it.
Okay, so is that Guadalupe Island?
Well,
yeah, that's the one.
like Guadalupe.
Right off that island, right there, beneath the sea. They deployed the entire the Nimitz carrier.
That's David
group.
Fravers.
Yep.
Right.
And they monitored over 100 sightings of UFOs coming and going down into the ocean right there and going down to the bottom of the ocean. And they were monitored by the submarines. That's right. Monitored by the submarines underneath the water coming and going, so that there's virtually certainly a base there. And that there's another base outside of Sedona, Arizona, over by there's a place called Secret Mountain, Secret Mountain Wilderness over there. That's just totally desolate.
This is in 2023. Remember
area. There's a base there where where the craft are, and so that in there's a number of them high in the mountains and remote areas of the planet, and that they're here now, and that they're extraordinarily distressed. You can tell about the state of affairs right now.
So it's interesting there. Danny is saying that they're here and they're distressed. They're distressed about the state of affairs right now, which is interesting. And, in one way, I can agree with that because, things aren't good. But it seems like there are sort of two narratives here, and you'll sort of see that throughout today's video. It does seem like one camp is very much like, they're all good. They want to help us, love and light, which I'm all for. But then there's another camp that really kind of seems like they're actually controlling us and manipulating us. And you know what? Both can be true. Both can be true. You don't have to pick a side there because both can be true. Because, again, guys, if it is true that there is a alien species here, or that they even exist, let's just say exist, then I'm sure it's not just one. There's probably a lot of them with a lot of different ideas and agendas, and probably even within themselves, different belief systems or whatever, right? I saw a few people trying to correct me and say Ashton and Julian don't like each other. Yes, that is correct. I was being sarcastic. You will get that with me. It's probably not good because we're talking about very serious things, but I will say things that are just complete bullshit. But it's up to you guys to use your discernment. I'm testing you, okay? Use your discernment. Little test. Keep you on your toes. All right. So, it's also, we're not going to look at a video on this, but I just want to touch on it quickly. Let's remember that in the 70s, Pat Price, as part of the remote viewing program, saw 4 alien bases underneath 4 different mountains around the world. And this was corroborated by other remote viewers in the Project Stargate sort of team, right? And obviously, yes, it's remote viewing. This isn't hard evidence, but, CIA and these people were taking this stuff very seriously. And people like Pat Price and Joe McMoneagle, I think, was another one who corroborated it. These guys were noted as the elite remote viewers. They were they were there for a reason, put it that way. But of course, it is remote viewing at the end of the day. You can't prove it. But one of which, famously, which I've talked about on the channel, was Mount Zeal. Okay, and Mount Zeal, I'm bringing this up because we're kind of talking about militaries, not just working with them, right? Mount Zeal you could almost hit with a rock from Pine Gap. Okay, that's Mount Zeal and Pine Gap are like this. So if it's true that militaries are working with aliens and remote viewers in the 70s said there was an alien base at Mount Zeal and then Pine Gap was established, it's right next to it. What are the odds of that? The world's a pretty big place. And, you know, Pine Gap is one of, if not the most secret and sensitive defense facilities in Australia. And it's clear that if you look at it, like the majority of the thing is underground. Like all you can see from the top is like a couple of buildings and a couple of satellites. Like it looks like nothing from the top. It's obviously an underground facility, right? And it's a joint facility. If anyone doesn't know, it's a joint facility between us, the Australians, and the Americans. But like the reality of that joint facility, like we don't really know what actually goes on there. Okay. In fact, one of our prime ministers in the 70s tried to push for transparency to say, like, you know, if you're going to be operating this shit in our backyard, you know, what the hell are you doing? You need to tell us more. And that resulted in him, our prime minister, which is like the equivalent of your president, getting sacked. He got sacked. He got fired. Okay. So just think about that. He tried to pry into what the CIA were doing at Pine Gap in his own country and got fired as a prime minister, the only prime minister in history. Okay, so that just gives you an idea of who's actually in control, right? So, first of all, I think we should put their rent up. But let's listen to Richard Dolan talk about a few other places, right? Yes, I did say sack. That is correct. So, we're going to skip to... Where are you, Richard? Richard. I think about here. All right, let's go.
Of the more legendary locations that have persisted in UFO lore for years, places like Dulce, New Mexico. It's long rumored to house some kind of joint alien-human underground facility.
Yep.
We've had wild claims circulating for decades about that place. Genetic experiments and hidden chambers and
Who knows what he's hinting at there? Come on, get some answers in the chat. We're going to look at it. We've covered it on the channel. Come on, I'm testing you all. Scholars of ufology. What is he referencing there? Hit me in the chat.
You know, fights, armed conflict, and that type of thing. True or not, I don't know, but again, there's been a consistency of these legends. Dulce is one of many. You've got persistent rumors about Mount Shasta, about certain regions in the Andes Mountains, even underwater locations like off the coast of California, Catalina Island, or in the Puerto Rico Trench, up in the Himalayas. Some of these ideas are clearly more myth than fact.
Area 666, congratulations.
But some, I would just say, maybe not so easy to dismiss. So let's just step back for a moment and apply logic.
I love logic.
So if UFOs or UAPs are real, and they are operating on or near our planet on a regular basis, which it certainly looks like to me.
It does.
Does it make sense that they're just popping in and out from some faraway star system every time? No, of course not. Of course not. It would make far more sense strategically, operationally, logistically, that they've established some form of infrastructure here. Something hidden and secure, something long-term. Why risk repeated interstellar travel if you don't have to? If you're here to observe or experiment or monitor or even harvest, then you want permanence. You want concealment. You would want an anchor point. You would want some kind of base. And if that is true, so if alien bases are real, then the implications are staggering. Because it means this isn't, you know, all of the UFO phenomena is not some series of isolated incidents. It's not just a few glimpses of strange lights in the sky. It would mean that this is an established physical presence operating in secrecy right here on Earth.
Eversource says Trump is Elvis Presley. Very off topic, but I have seen the comparisons and they are very strange. I don't think he actually is though, but it's interesting.
Which brings us to the big question that's driving this video. what if it's all true? If UFOs are real and of non-human origin, if there are alien bases operating here, then what? So if there really are alien bases, structures maintained here on Earth by a non-human intelligence, then we are dealing with a situation that radically changes how we should view pretty much everything about our world.
Everything.
First and most obvious, alien infrastructure. A base implies infrastructure. It means there's more going on than just flybys or occasional experiments. This is about physicality, engineering, construction, maintenance. These beings aren't just popping in from some other galaxy to tag a few cattle and then leave. No. If there are alien bases, then they have real-world logistics. They have to build, supply, power, and secure these facilities. And I think we tend to overlook these types of questions because, I don't know, do we assume aliens have omnipotent powers and then can snap their fingers to create whatever they want? Sometimes I get the idea that this is what people think. They assume, well, they're just so powerful, they don't really need to worry about such, pedestrian, mundane things as that. Well, I can imagine that they are beyond us in terms of all kinds of capabilities, but maybe it is not a stretch to assume that they have work also. Maybe some are underground or beneath mountains or in deserts or beneath the ocean. But wherever they are, having alien bases, I'm going to say plural, implies a presence that is engaged and sustained and organized. So that's the first thing.
So there we go. And a lot of you guys did get it right. I'm very proud. Give yourself a little pat on the back. At the start of that clip there, before we were talking about the bases and the infrastructure of these non-human intelligences, if this is real and they actually are here, was Phil Schneider. Okay, talking about the case in Dulce, New Mexico, which I covered recently because I think it holds a lot of weight. And I really like that case because it's actually one of the first things that took me from being just like, curious about like, woohoo, green aliens, what's going on here, to being like, holy shit, like this is actually wild. So that was my red pill, and that was in about 2013. And I've never forgotten that one. And a lot of people have attacked Phil Schneider's credibility. Actually, let's pull him up quickly.
1947 is what the...
Hang on, Phil. Not yet, mate. Not yet. It's going to put you up there. So a lot of people have attacked his credibility with like the usual type of things, right? Family members after the fact, after he mysteriously passed away, admitting to things which could easily be done by putting pressure on them. There are a lot of things that I think could be explainable, okay, given the extent that people have evidently gone to for this cover-up. But the amount of stuff that Phil Schneider said in the 90s that sounded absolutely batshit crazy. Like, guys, this is like 1995 that he was saying this stuff. Okay, 1995. And then remember, yes, he mysteriously died like a year or two later. And in all the speeches that he did, he would always say, I'm not depressed. I've had attempts on my life. I will keep talking about this. People need to know. And then he was found dead in a very mysterious way. Okay. And, it's like a classic case of all the things he said got him labeled as like a lunatic, conspiracy theorist. A lot of those things have actually come to light now, specifically the whole deep underground military base thing. I mean, deep underground military bases are almost just like everyone knows about them now. It's not even a thing. In 1995, people were like, dude, you're a lunatic. Okay? Things have changed. So now it's like, okay, well, if that stuff has come true, what else that he said was actually true that maybe still seems a bit wild, but slowly as these years go on, is also going to come to light, because we are slowly realizing that reality is far different to what we're allowed to know, right? And the other things that he talks about is the fact that there are aliens living underground and that he ran into them in the American Southwest, Arizona, Sedona, in that area. And what do you know? Look at where we are now. Look at what we're talking about. Look at what Richard Dolan is saying. Look at what Ross Coulthart has said. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think in the chat? Let's take a listen. We've got a little cut up here, a couple of things that Phil Schneider had to say.
Has been told something crashed in the backyard in New Mexico, a place called Roswell, New Mexico. Unfortunately, that's what the public's been told. The military's known about the alien question for the better part of 70 years, and they first saw their glimpse of what was going on as early as 1909 in the American Southwest.
1909.
Now, Army cavalry evidently were chasing some bandits, and they entered this cave. They were holed up in a cave, and what they found in there was flying discs and little gray guys and all kinds of weird things, and they didn't know how to explain that, and they wrote them down as best they could, and it's been in secret archives ever since.
I mean, that in itself is wild. He's saying in 1909, Army cavalry, which to me sounds like on horseback. I mean, I think cars like the Ford, like Model T or whatever, I think that was around 1909. Probably the police weren't using them, but some kind of law enforcement on horseback was chasing bandits in the Southwest and allegedly ran into a cave, which you, I guess, could say could potentially go underground or lead underground, where they saw saucers and little grey guys and things like that. 1909. And, you know, that's not far away from the whole G.E. Kincaid story, which is, I believe, 1912 with the Egyptian hieroglyphics in the Grand Canyon. You know, we've talked about that stuff a lot. I mean, it's wild. Let's keep listening.
That's up in the down by the Truth or Consequences area of New Mexico. Well, the alien thing is more than just what I'd call a non-visible threat. We on the surface, first of all information dealing with alien or alien reproduced technology or alien reproduced vehicles or any other kinds of things well hidden from the American public. Our black budget, for instance, garners $1.023 trillion every 2 years. It's over $500 billion a year. Right now, there are 131 active deep underground military bases in the United States.
In 1995, that is. Okay, that's 30 years ago. There was already over 100. Quick $8 super chat from Stevie Oggy, 1992. He says, head of state in Australia is King Charles under Commonwealth law. That is why the PM could easily be removed. I did a deep dive on all that. I'll link the Pine Gap video below after the stream. Thank you for the $8, Stevie. And we also had a tenner come in from Lance. He says, thanks, Master Widow Josh. Love your work. Lance, thank you for the support, brother. I appreciate you.
There's 1,477 of them worldwide. Each one has an average cost of $17 to $19 billion. Each one is built in the site. It used to be, it'd take a year to 2 years to build each one. And now they're capable of building a couple of them a year with sophisticated methods.
So that's how expensive they are. And they're building a few of them per year. Maybe that's where all the money's going. And Joel Quinn in the chat is right. He says, to Phil's credit, Catherine Fitz later confirmed the black budgets and she was in the Treasury. That's right. And guys, if you haven't seen my video on Phil Schneider, we actually looked at that clip from Catherine Fitz that is corroborating him. Because like I said, a lot of this stuff that was crazy in the 90s, it's becoming reality. So we need to look at, okay, if 35-40% of what this guy is saying has actually come true, maybe we should look a little bit harder at the other 70 or 60% that also seems wild, just as wild as the deep underground military bases did in 1995. But that's true. Maybe something else was true.
The thing I want to reach to you is that during the unbelievable part, I was involved in building another base inside of Dulce, New Mexico, which is Los Alamos Laboratory.
Here we go.
Biological laboratory. On the southwest part of the Archuleta Mesa, we built an underground facility, a better part of 3 cubic miles, hollowed out underground. Drilling machines that were used were were at the rate of up 2 miles a day. It was fairly rapid. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down and wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, find out what was going on. Well, to our total surprise, first of all, the government knew all about it. They didn't tell anybody. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. The gig was up. First of all, I knew all about the alien agenda. I'll explain that in a few minutes. The large alien grays had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years. It had been one of their internal bases.
There it is. 400 or 500 years. And, you know, you could say, well, how does Phil Schneider know this? Well, look, go and watch the Phil Schneider video after this that I did, because I talked about that. An interesting fact that I think a lot of people miss about Phil Schneider is that his dad was a U-boat captain for the Nazis. Okay, Phil Schneider's dad, his name is Oscar Schneider, came to America through Operation Paperclip. Okay, the people who likely were involved in setting up the foundations, not just for the space program, but for probably the whole advanced aircraft and advanced technology systems, right? I mean, just look at the comparisons between the B-2 bomber and the original Horton flying wing. I mean, it's obviously just a new version of the same thing. It's wild. It is wild. There was a comment here that I wanted to touch on. I may have missed it. I think it's gone. Okay. Let's keep moving. Where were we? Yes. Okay. Apologies. So, first of all, there's the part of 1909, which is crazy. That's predates Magenta. That is the earliest, at least anecdotal account of something anomalous like this being found in the Southwest. Okay, 1909, that there has been knowledge of this. Someone did say, actually, that the secret space program is real. And I wanted to highlight that because Richard's video, the title of Richard's video is, "What if it's all real?" As in, what if it's all real? All of it. Even the craziest parts, right? And that's what we're going to get into towards the end of this video, because secret space program, you know, if these bases and stuff are real, then I think that could be too. So we're going to jump back to Richard Dolan here. Let me just grab... Actually, we're going to carry on. So let's keep listening to Richard. Let me bump this volume up.
Second, long-term commitment. These bases are not temporary campsites. We're not talking about something that was set up last week. If people like Kellerstrass or Ross's people are to be believed, it would appear that these facilities have existed for decades or maybe far longer. You know, these things, non-human, something there that we might occasionally interact with after we discover it, but on their terms only. The implications of this are quite enormous, because if they've been here for any long-term period of time, then it's not just maybe about observing us. Maybe it's about, is it about managing us or coexisting with us quietly on their terms? That makes it interesting, doesn't it?
That's very interesting.
Third, concealment, control. Every indication that we have points to one simple fact. If there are bases, they are hidden. That means advanced cloaking or concealment technology. I've written about this from time to time, particularly in my discussion of underwater operations in my current USO series. You get a situation where these craft that seem to disappear even under the ocean without a trace. They're obviously very good at being stealthy. And we see this in the behavior of UFO sightings worldwide throughout history. These things are stealthy. I think it's for a reason. But I think the concealment goes even further than that. So you think about how many of these bases are alleged to be located in places that are either physically remote or militarily restricted or maybe geologically shielded. I think there is a logic to this. It's that invisibility isn't just a technological feature. It is very likely a strategic necessity for them.
Of course, it's a strategic necessity to be concealed and hidden if your goal is to control and manage.
Another implication would be geographic domination. If these bases exist, then that means there's certain regions of our planet that are effectively alien territory. Let's just be blunt. We may have the maps, we may claim sovereignty, but we may not be the ones in control of those places. That could be parts of the deep oceans, or maybe the polar regions, or mountain ranges, or places in the Arizona or Nevada desert.
Okay.
So if there's an alien infrastructure in these places, then it's fair to wonder if those parts of our planet are not actually our own. They're alien adjacent and maybe alien controlled.
Isn't that a wild idea? Imagine if we all found out that the land that we live on is actually like alien land and they actually live here underground. Like, how much would that shake? Like, just that fact alone would, like, imagine if you got a map of your state, where you live, your country, and then overlaid on top of it was just some kind of completely random, sporadic zonage of where aliens live underground. That would flip the whole, like, property market. Like, that would flip so many things. And imagine, like, if it happened to be, like, right where the cities are or right next to the cities, like, those cities would likely dive in value because no one would want to live there. Just that, I mean, not that I'm saying that's a reason not to have disclosure, but, like, just that in itself is a massive problem. And that's just, like, talking about geographical implications. And that's a small part of disclosure, right? Yeah, so like Richard said in that, this is obviously a really good explanation to why they're concealed, and also, like, the idea of cloaking. Their craft seem to, well, we hear about things dematerializing, technology that can basically appear like they're there, and then they're not. They're built into mountains, or they're even the ocean. And, you know, those things are decisions of someone or something who doesn't want to be seen or known about. Like, this is something that intentionally wants to operate in the shadows and not be seen or bothered, right? So why would they want to do that? And obviously, this is something that probably understands humanity very well. And perhaps they understand us very, very well because they've been monitoring or managing us for a very long time. Even, I think it's worth considering that this entity, let's call them an entity or entities, have been managing us through previous cycles of humanity, and perhaps previous cycles of humanity. You know, let's think of it like a video game. Let's think of it like a video game where you do a save. Okay, you start from fresh, you do a save run, and you make some mistakes. You reset the game, and now you try again, but you try a few things differently to try and take the game further. Well, maybe in the last game they were like, okay, we're gonna my strategy on this time is we're going to sort of coexist. We're going to live alongside them. They'll kind of see us as like gods or like higher beings. And we're going to try and, live alongside them. They'll sort of worship us and work for us. And that's how we'll do it. Well, maybe they learnt that time that humans, we like sovereignty. We don't like being told what to do. We don't like being managed and manipulated. So in the new save file, they've thought, okay, new strat. We're going to try and do this from the shadows and just interface with, like, the very top, the people who can kind of run things on our behalf. Okay. And I feel like this is just a theory. Those people are probably inserted all throughout key establishments like the intelligence agencies, like the military, like the government. And therefore, whenever any effort to actually understand what is going on and disclose the truth surfaces in the government, in the White House, Congress, it just gets, like, destroyed because there is systems and like you could say infrastructure built into the system that just doesn't allow it to pass because the system that is in control doesn't want it to. Therefore, it never will unless there is like some kind of intervention or something like that. Again, this is me just theorizing based on the data that we have. Another 50 from, where is it? I'm losing. I'm so sorry. Where is it? $50 again from El Significa. He says, billionaire secret bunkers, quite the fad. Clock in, mountain fun, the bells are ringing. The alarm bells are certainly ringing. Thank you for another huge donation, mate. Thank you. I really do appreciate that a lot. So what I was getting at there is that, you know, maybe if we actually were to learn the truth, the terrible truth, that we are being manipulated and controlled from the very, very top, and that, you know, there's nothing we can do to break out of this system other than like overthrow it, revolt. And that's actually what Phil Schneider says in his speech. Go and check that video out. I did. I think if they came out and said, okay, the truth is, yep, we have been essentially enslaved for a long time by another species. They are higher up on the food chain than us, on the hierarchy of beings. You know, a higher IQ. They somehow have abilities that we don't understand, technology that we don't understand. I think maybe all hell would break loose. Maybe, I don't know. But I feel like that could actually trigger like a human alien war, like potentially. I think that is probably like a concern that they would have, right? And you know, maybe that's what they've been preparing us for. Maybe that's why weapons have always been the priority for almost every country in the world to be putting their money into developing. People are still right now, as the planet, like I said earlier, is struggling to stay afloat. And what I mean by that is, you know, the cost of living is extremely high at the moment. People are struggling. There's a lot of homeless. There's a lot of It feels like we're being squeezed. It feels like we're being squeezed as a society. And while we're being squeezed and like looking for sort of assistance, the governments are pushing each other to be spending more of their GDP on defense. That to me feels like you're preparing for something. I don't want to be a doomer, but like that's just, you know, when I read the room, that's how it kind of reads to me. Maybe that's 2027. Maybe that's why this is all so complicated because, you know, maybe it's not only like imperative that society doesn't discover that it's being controlled by a non-human force. Like that in itself is like a, you know, the rule makers at the top, they must not know. They cannot know. They're not allowed to know. That's like one element to it. But to try and paint humans in the best light, which I always do, and I, you know, that some may say that's naive, but I do like to paint us in the best light. I think that perhaps there's also, I think these can both be true, right? That may be true, the controlling and like a, you know, manipulated society. But what could also be true, another layer to disclosure, is that we are actually trying to steal or the craft and technology that we happen to find. We are stealing it, bringing it down, and trying to work on it and figure out how it works so we can get rid of them. So we can use it and have a fighting chance and get rid of them. This is just a theory. I'm not saying this is what it is, but it would make sense, right? It would make sense because that adds another layer, okay? If there are humans sort of running this thing at the very, very, very top, they could also be running that, and then there could be another secret element that's like above top secret, top secret, deep, deep, deep black, that is trying to work on something that can kick them out to free us, which would mean a human alien war. Okay? That's a wild thing to say. I know. I'm not trying to say that's what's happening. I'm just trying to say, based on what we can see, it's a theory that I think is at least valid. It's worth being spoken about. It's worth considering, is what I'm trying to say. So given that, let's take a look at the next clip here. It's from everyone's favorite. I know we all love this guy. Say what you want about him. And, I've had my fair share of criticism too. And I think that's okay. Doesn't mean I hate him. Doesn't mean I dislike him. People you can criticize and, it's okay. But I really like what Lou says in this clip. I find it very interesting. Let's take a look.
Hypothetically, imagine a scenario where maybe we had 50 years to prepare for something, but now that the cat's out of the bag, that existential action will happen tomorrow. And by the way, we're not ready for it. We're not prepared for it.
So we're going to listen to the rest, but he's saying, what if we had 50 years to prepare for something and the very act of disclosure would trigger it and we're not ready yet? So the act of telling everyone, oh, yeah, bad news, guys. Aliens are in control, actually have been for a while, manipulating us. That's why we can't stop going to war. That's why we keep bombing each other. That's why everyone is confused and angry and hates each other because, as people have said, somehow they feed off of this conflict and negativity. Somehow. And the very act of disclosing their existence ruins the pact, the agreement, whatever it is, and it's going to trigger an event. And they want to make sure that they're ready. They've been trying to reverse engineer and steal all this technology and try and work out what the hell this stuff is and how it works. So when that moment comes, they're ready to use this reverse engineered technology and try to create a sovereign society again. Just a theory. Just a theory.
We don't have a countermeasure. We don't have a capability to counter this. And so from a very real perspective, a national security perspective, the mere fact that you are acknowledging the existence of something may predicate an action or an act that you're not prepared to have right now. And so I encourage you and your listeners to just for a moment, I'm not asking you to be a national security person, but I'm asking you to suspend your personal beliefs right now for just a moment and put yourself in somebody else's shoes who does feel that way, right? Now, what do? If the mere fact of talking about this could potentially cause a reaction that you're not ready for as a country, as a civilization, right? Maybe that's the reason why you decide to only brief certain presidents who have a background in intelligence. Maybe they
People are saying Lou's build a bunker. Apparently, I have heard lots of people say that. He does live out in like Wyoming or like Montana, somewhere like out there in like sort of, the middle of nowhere, apparently, with a bunker. Yeah, he does. But what he's saying here is like, just put all your beliefs aside for a sec. Imagine if the act of disclosure triggers something catastrophic. That's why the topic is so difficult and hard to manage, and it's not a rush to get this idea out, because what he's alluding to the fact is that the act of disclosure may trigger something that we're not ready for, which means if they're not ready, it means they've been preparing for it. You know what I mean? Like, to say we're not ready says you are preparing, but you're not ready yet. Is that why we invest in weapons so heavily? I don't know.
They were former directors of CIA, but the other presidents who are career politicians will be, they're here today, gone in 4 years. Maybe you can't even risk telling them. And so maybe the reason why this has been kept secret so long is actually, in a weird sense, some sort of sense of patriotism by people. And maybe that's how they justify it. And I'll leave that at that as a just to,
say, yeah, he's saying, and this is what you really need to be able to like just put your own biases aside and try to gain a broader perspective of the situation to truly like understand what he's saying here. Like, this isn't about hating Lou or calling him a fraud or like or whatever. Okay, like let's just put that aside for a second. You need to be able to understand that like the people who are probably responsible for this stuff have such a different perspective to me and you. Okay, we're all just like internet ufologists who are, probably mildly autistic and have a deep curiosity for life and, how we got here. Why are we here? What is going on? Why is the world crazy? Okay, that's our perspective. And I think that's a great perspective to have. It's healthy most of the time. But then you've got people who are like born and bred military, like thoroughbred, like die for their country. That is the most important thing to them in the world. Maybe they come from a family of military every generation. Do you think some like ufologists on the internet crying about wanting to know about aliens, like, how do you think they're going to view that? They're going to be like, mate, I don't give a fuck what you think. I don't give a fuck what you think. Okay? I'm a lieutenant colonel. I was born and bred in the army, in intelligence. My dad and grandfather were all this. We're all Medal of Honors and shit. And I know the truth, and I'm doing my job and trying to protect you by not revealing it. Okay? So again, and I'm not saying that's true. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just trying to give you, like, people can be acting in a way that to us is like it's destructive and it's annoying and frustrating. But to them, they actually probably want the same thing deep down. They probably want, you know, peace, no war, truth, transparency, harmony in the world. But they're going about it in like their own like militarized, you know, by the book way. So yeah, that was just a little side rant on perspective. Okay. Because I think like a lot of people throw names around and name call and shit. And I don't always think it's necessary. You just need a little bit more perspective that lots of different things can kind of be true at the same time.
As a counterpoint of forcing people to think maybe a little bit non-traditionally. Now, do I think if that happened to ever be the case, that's a good explanation? No. I still think that we have to be honest with the American people. You know, it's like I've said this before, it's like going to the doctor. Just because I have cancer, you know, it's bad news. Don't keep that from me. I want to know, because maybe there's a chance I can do something about it, right?
I mean, that is like for Lou to use that as like an example of learning you have cancer is the equivalent of disclosure. Like, let's just extrapolate that out. Obviously, learning you have cancer is an individual disclosure, right? Is an individual poor disclosure. We're talking about disclosure on a planetary level. There is some kind of equivalent to cancer on our planet. That is at least how he is comparing this. That learning disclosure, the terrible truth, is going to be like kind of learning we have cancer. Hopefully it's not terminal.
And so, but do I understand that mentality? Sure. Nobody wants to give anybody bad news. Now, am I saying that's the case? No, I'm not. It's just, you asked me one of the reasons why people would want to keep this secret. Well,
no, he's backpedaling.
That's a really damn good reason why people may want to keep this secret, because the mere fact of not keeping it secret could cause a reaction that you're not ready for yet. There's nothing you can do. You don't have a countermeasure. So again, from a national security perspective, you know, that makes sense. Again, I don't agree with it, but you know, that's understandable. Ultimately.
So there you go. Lou thinks it's understandable. He can see why things are happening the way they are. Why? What on earth? Sorry, my phone just randomly started playing my stream. I have no idea how that happened. Anyway, so that completely threw me off. We're going to jump back to Richard Dolan quickly. Again, Richard is telling us what if it's all true, and then we're going to get into like peak tinfoil hat territory. Okay, tinfoil hats are required for the following segment after Richard. All right, Richard, where are you? Okay, here we go.
Secrecy and cover-up. And I'm talking secrecy by us and by them. So their desire for secrecy seems quite obvious. But from the human side of things, it's also fairly obvious why secrecy would exist. You know, if you consider that alien bases exist, it really becomes easy to see this. We know the cover-up is real, but the existence of bases takes that cover-up to an entirely different level. You know, it's a little bit more than just hiding videos or documents from the public. For many years, I have explored the...
Matthew Brown, we live in a false controlled reality. Anybody?
Question, why such extreme secrecy about UFOs or UAP? And frankly, the reasons are many. Hiding the tech is part of it, absolutely, especially from foreign nations that you don't trust. But really, hiding it from anyone who might crack advanced propulsion or energy systems, that's very likely something that the United States government doesn't just want out there willy-nilly. It's not hard to see that. We may not agree with that logic, but it's, I think, probably not difficult to see that they would be motivated not to let that information out. Frankly, anyone who has that information could gain a tremendous amount of power, militarily, economically, who knows. But of course, the secrecy goes deeper than that. You've got genuine existential, ontological questions that are not trivial. The mere idea of a superior, non-human presence operating freely here would very likely shake at least some global confidence. You have markets, institutions. All of those depend on the illusion of control. And then, so the idea of permanent alien bases, again, it's not hard to see how that would not go over well, especially if one of them is located within, say, a stone's throw of your house. Now, that may not be the case, but, well, what if they were in some other part of your state? I'm sure some of you that are watching this right now may live in Arizona or Nevada. I'm in upstate New York. What if?
Do we have anyone in the chat who lives in Arizona? Sedona specifically. Anyone in the chat live in Sedona? Has anyone been to Secret Mountain or around there? Because as you guys know, I'm trying to get to the States next year. I've got my flight there booked. But honestly, I've been thinking about this. It's been in the news recently that like the borders have been really tough. And like they've changed their stances. And I'm actually kind of like concerned that I'm not going to get let in. Because if they like look at my YouTube channel and they see that all my videos are like, the CIA are criminals, they're probably going to be like, no, do not come in. So I am a little bit concerned about that. I'm actually going to fly to Canada and enter like just via bus over the border. That way, if I get turned away, I can just go hang out in Canada for a while. Okay, a lot of people from Arizona. Have you guys ever seen anything weird? Have you been up near Secret Mountain? Have you hiked around the Sedona area? A lot of people say that in Sedona, there are accounts of people being like turned away. Oh, okay. Remember how I talked about my camera overheating? There it is. All right, we're gonna get back to Richard while I try and fix that. Oh my god.
If I learned that there is an alien base somewhere in, I don't know, the Adirondacks, how would I feel? Not thinking that I would love it, to be honest with you. So if you're a military or a government person who knows about such bases and you knew you had no ability to dislodge them, how exactly would you go about to discuss this? I'm not saying secrecy is the right decision here either, but I am saying it's not hard to see people deciding upon such a course as that. So we're dealing with a multi-generational deception, probably involving a very tiered system of access within the military-industrial complex, where not even the president, very likely, is fully read in. That's what it looks like. So secrecy, this type of secrecy has its own price. It distorts our science, it distorts our politics, our culture. And more than that, it creates a black hole where resources, money, and truth all disappear. And finally, if these bases exist, it means that we are not the dominant species here. Not in the way that we like to think. If someone else is here, more advanced, more capable, already embedded in our world, then our role may not be that of masters of the earth. Maybe we are being tolerated. Maybe we are being watched. Surely we're being watched, studied, maybe managed. I don't know how far this goes, but it could very well mean that our civilization is not what we thought it was. The world that we think we know is definitely incomplete. It is definitely edited and sanitize, and very likely missing a couple of big chapters.
Okay. Hopefully we're back. It may go off again, but we're nearly done. We don't have much to go. So the points that I wanted to pull from there is that he said that, you know, distorted truth, politics, and black holes where money just like disappears. He just described life in 2025. Pretty much. And, you know, like I said, Richard's premise of this video is what if it's all real? All of it. And his distorted politics comment got me thinking about Dr. Michael Salla and his exopolitics theory. Okay, this is something I've always been fascinated by, but this is definitely on the very fringe edge of things. Now, I'll tell you why I find Dr. Michael Salla interesting, right? Because first of all, he's an Aussie. I'll read you a little, actually, I'll pull this thing up. Here he is. Okay. So I'll give you a little bio on Michael Salla. Dr. Michael E. Salla is an Australian scholar with a PhD in government from the University of Queensland and an MA in philosophy from the University of Melbourne. He has held academic positions at institutions such as the Australian National University and American University in Washington, D.C., where he focused on international politics, conflict resolution, and US foreign policy. Okay, so just consider the areas that this guy is well versed in. Dr. Salla is renowned for pioneering the field of exopolitics, which is the study of the political implications of extraterrestrial life. His seminal work, Exopolitics, was started in 2004 and proposes that governments have concealed interactions with extraterrestrial beings influencing global political dynamics. He founded the Exopolitics Institute in 2005 to advance research and education in this domain, right? So, an extremely controversial guy, right? And we won't spend too long on this, but we will just take a look at the kind of stuff that he delves into. Because I find this interesting, for one, because of his background. Okay, this is a well-educated man who studied interesting things like international politics, conflict resolution, US foreign policy, and has come to the conclusion in 2005 that an extraterrestrial species has been influencing and manipulating political dynamics. And he talks about some wild shit, okay? And I feel like I've never spoken to Michael Salla. I interviewed Mac Mazda, who has been interviewed by Michael Salla on my channel, but I've never spoken to him, okay? And you can see here, just by his thumbnails, that he talks about some wild shit. Feline Draco War in ancient Egypt. Galactic envoys are waking up. Galactic Federation. Deep State abducts JP. Space Ark takeover plot. I mean, these are like crazy things, but like, again, Richard Dolan is talking about what if it's all real? And if there is, and like this is where we get to like secret space program area, right? Now, I think Dr. Salla is well-intentioned, and like a lot of people probably like started off well. But, and I'll just say, like, I don't watch all of his content, as you can see. I try to check in every now and then because I do find it like very interesting. But for example, like this person who's on his show regularly called JP talks about the most wildest shit, okay? And I'm loosely going to try and quote it, but like this guy gets, you know, taken to like other planets. He's avatars into like bodies of other beings and shit. Like it's as far out as it can go, essentially. But this JP person has never showed his identity. He rocks up on the show wearing like a fucking Master Chief Halo helmet. And he's like casual and kind of like laughs and stuff like that. So, and you know, but Michael Salla then also takes him seriously. So it's, you know, how far do you go down the rabbit hole? Where do you draw the line of crazy? I've talked about this on the show many times. Like, where do you draw the line of crazy? Some people draw it before UFOs. Some people will say, oh, UFOs are real, but they're all man-made. There's no such thing as aliens. That's their line of crazy. Some people will say UFOs are real, reptilians are real, but secret space programs, space arcs, that's too far. And then some people go the full hog, and they are Elena Danaan going to Neptune for the weekend, having a war with lions and aliens and secret space programs with Nazis on the moon. Okay, some people are all in. Now, I don't knock people that are that far, because I stay open-minded. As wild as that shit is, I stay open-minded because once you realize that, holy shit, UFOs and this stuff is actually real, you kind of have to leave the door open for everything else, because you've just now realized and come to the conclusion that you've been lied to about like the truth of reality. You've been lied to about the truth of reality for a long time by control systems who this video is kind of uncovering is perhaps a non-human intelligence itself or in its origin. So you have to then start asking, what else is true? How weird and how wild does it actually get? And I don't know the answer to that. But when we talk about people like Michael Salla, it's interesting. I don't know how far to go with that stuff. I would love to talk to him and just kind of pick his brain and see how he comes to these conclusions. How does he vet the people that he speaks to? Because at the very least, he's a super interesting guy with some very interesting guests. But that pretty much wraps up the show for today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed it. It's not as long as we do normally with the live streams, but they don't always have to be mega long. I think I would like to ideally do all my shows just live and just leave them up for videos for people to watch later. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the Suki cam as well. She's there just getting cozy. I'm going to go to bed. It's nearly midnight, but I'll be back at it tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have a video up. Take care, be good, be kind, and I'll see you guys then.
Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.